All right, so you're thinking about Fort Lauderdale, huh?
Sounds like someone's ready for some fun in the sun.
Definitely. But you've also got all these articles and notes. It seems like you're looking for more than just the typical beach vacation. You want to uncover the hidden gems, the local spots that most tourists miss. Am I right?
You're spot on. It looks like you're going for a deep dive into the heart of the city. You want to experience the real Fort Lauderdale and not just the tourist traps.
Exactly. And that's what we're here for, right?
Yeah.
To help you go beyond the surface and really get to know this place.
Absolutely. We're your guides to uncovering the hidden gems and local flavor that make Fort Lauderdale so special.
Perfect. So let's start with the basics. Everyone says Fort Lauderdale is more than just a pretty beach.
Oh, absolutely. Don't get me wrong, those beaches are stunning.
Right.
But there's so much more to the city than just sun and sand.
Okay, I'm intrigued. So what else makes Fort Lauderdale tick?
Well, you've probably heard it called the Venice of America, right? And it's not just a catchy nickname.
Because of all the canals, right? I've seen pictures. It's pretty incredible.
Exactly. We're talking 165 miles of waterways woven throughout the city canals instead of streets in many places.
Wow. So instead of cars driving by your house, it's boats. How does that even work?
It creates this completely unique lifestyle. You could be strolling down the street and see a gondola gliding past a mega yacht. It's that kind of contrast that makes Fort Lauderdale so special.
Hold on, gondolas. Like straight out of Venice, Italy gondolas.
You got it. They're
Man,
one of those unexpected little details that make this city so charming.
I love it. See, this is why I love a good deep dive. You always stumble upon these little surprises. Now let's talk about a spot that seems to be the heart of the city, Las Olas Boulevard. What are we picturing here?
Imagine a sun-drenched street lined with sidewalk cafes and art galleries. Live music spills out from hidden courtyards, and you might stumble upon a bustling farmer's market.
Sounds lively.
It has this infectious energy that pulls you in, and the best part is that it stretches all the way from downtown to the beach.
Oh, wow. So it's like a timeline of Fort Lauderdale.
Yeah.
You can start downtown at maybe someplace fancy like the Ritz-Carlton.
Exactly, and then end up with your toes in the sand at the Elbow Room. It's like walking through the city's history.
And talk about landmarks. The Elbow Room, Bubba Gum Shrimp, even the Ritz itself. It's like Las Olas Boulevard tells the story of Fort Lauderdale.
I like how you put that. It's not just a collection of places. It's a reflection of the city's unique blend of history, culture, and modern-day excitement.
Okay, so we've covered the canals in Las Olas.
Yeah.
But we can't forget about the other elephant in the room, or should I say yacht.
The yacht capital of the world reputation is definitely well-deserved.
50,000 registered yachts. That's a whole lot of yachts.
It's a testament to the city's deep connection to the water. But don't worry, you don't need to own a yacht to enjoy it.
So you're saying I could be out there on a paddleboard alongside a yacht the size of my apartment building?
You got it. Fort Lauderdale is about that unexpected mix. You've got everything from kayak rentals to those gondola rides. It's a city that offers a taste of the water life for everyone, not just the super rich.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
But with all this talk of bustling streets and yachts, it makes you wonder, are there any peaceful escapes in Fort Lauderdale?
Absolutely. You just need to know where to look. That's where your research on the different neighborhoods comes in.
I was just thinking that. Where can you go to escape the buzz when you need a break from all the excitement?
One place that stands out is Victoria Park. It has this old Florida charm with tree-lined streets and historic homes. The pace of life is just different there,
Slower.
definitely more relaxed. And then there's Lauderdale by the Sea. We read about that couple who moved there from Minnesota 30 years ago and never looked back.
They called it paradise. That's a pretty strong endorsement, don't you think?
It just goes to show that Fort Lauderdale isn't a one-size-fits-all destination.
You can find your own version of the city, whatever that looks like for you.
Whether you're looking for the energy of Las Olas or the laid-back vibe of a seaside village, Fort Lauderdale has something for everyone.
I love that. And with all this talk about the city, we keep seeing nature woven into the mix. What's the deal with that?
Well, you can't forget that Fort Lauderdale is still Florida. Nature is never too far away.
So they've managed to strike a balance between city life and the natural beauty of Florida.
Exactly. You can have the best of both worlds. Here's an example. Right in the middle of everything, you've got Hugh Taylor Birch State Park.
I was just reading about that. It looks beautiful. What can you do there?
You can go kayaking, explore nature trails. It's like escaping into a different world without even leaving the city.
And then on the flip side, you've got Oceanside Park, which sounds like the complete opposite.
That's the beauty of Fort Lauderdale. You've got options. You can go from kayaking through mangroves in the morning to catching a concert under the stars that same evening.
So you're telling me I can have a nature adventure and a city experience all in one day?
Exactly. That's Fort Lauderdale in a nutshell. It's a city that breaks the mold and defies expectations.
I'm getting serious FOMO just hearing about all this. So many vibes, so little time. We've got Victoria Park with its old school charm and Lauderdale by the Sea, our Minnesota paradise.
Right.
What other hidden gems are we uncovering today?
Well, your notes here about the New River area caught my eye. There's a neighborhood there called Rio Vista. Apparently, it's known for these stunning Mediterranean-style mansions and lush landscaping.
Okay, Rio Vista, you had me at Mediterranean Mansion. I'm picturing cobblestone streets, hidden courtyards, maybe even a few peacocks treading around.
And you'd be tapping into some serious history, too. Many of those mansions date back to the 1920s and 30s. It's like taking a step back in time to Fort Lauderdale's glamorous past.
History and glamour, sign me up. But let's say you're more into the modern scene. What does Fort Lauderdale have for those vibes?
You might be drawn to the Flagler Village Arts District, then. It's a newer neighborhood, a hub for artists, musicians, and entrepreneurs.
Okay, so Flagler Village is where the cool kids hang out, right? Street art, indie music, those coffee shops where everyone has a laptop and a dog.
Pretty much. It's got that distinct bohemian energy, converted warehouses, art walks, food trucks. It's a real celebration of creativity.
I love that each neighborhood has its own personality. It's like choosing your own adventure.
Yeah.
Speaking of which, let's get back to those waterways. Besides those gondolas, what are some unique ways to experience Fort Lauderdale from the water?
Well, the water taxi keeps popping up in your research.
Oh yeah, I read about that. It's like a city bus, but on the water, right?
Exactly.
Mhm.
You can hop between downtown the beach, even over to Hugh Taylor Birch State Park, all while cruising along the canals.
Imagine sipping your iced latte, and instead of traffic jams, it's yachts going by peak relaxation mode achieved.
Plus, no parking hassles, which in a city known for its yachts is a huge win. Speaking of which, have you considered what kind of traveler you are? Fort Lauderdale has so much to offer. Figuring out your pace will help you narrow things down.
That's a good point. Are you the type who wants to do all the things, or are you more about soaking up the atmosphere, maybe finding a quiet beach to chill on?
Exactly. Are you drawn to the city center's energy with all the shops and nightlife? Or do you yearn for a more secluded vibe?
Maybe you're a bit of both.
Mm-hmm.
I know I am. I love exploring a city, but I also need those moments of peace. And speaking of peace, we can't have a deep dive into Fort Lauderdale without talking about those pristine beaches, can we?
Absolutely not. Your sources paint a picture of a coastline that's just as diverse as the city itself.
So we've got Fort Lauderdale Beach Park with volleyball games, beach bars, that classic Florida vibe.
Right. And then there are the quieter spots like Lauderdale by the Sea, where you can escape the crowds and just relax.
Don't forget those iconic white wave walls. Talk about a photo op. They add a touch of whimsy and elegance to the coastline. Instantly recognizable.
They really do. Okay, you've convinced me Fort Lauderdale is officially on my bucket list. But with so much to see and do, where do you even start planning a trip?
It's almost overwhelming, isn't it?
It can be, but that's where a little planning goes a long way. Remember that couple who moved to Lauderdale by the Sea from Minnesota? They raved about the wildlife.
Right. They were all about that no-snow life, which I can definitely relate to.
So if you're a nature enthusiast, prioritize exploring those parks and waterways. Maybe a kayaking trip through the Everglades, or a visit to Flamingo Gardens.
And if you're a history buff, a stroll through the Bonnet House Museum and Gardens might be right up your alley.
The key is to use these personal experiences as jumping-off points. What resonates with you? What sparks your curiosity?
It's like piecing together a puzzle, right?
Exactly.
Using these little details to build your own perfect Fort Lauderdale adventure.
Exactly. And the best part, the real joy is in the discovery.
You know what always gets me excited? Those little details you find, like in your research there, about the elbow room being featured in the movie Where the Boys Are.
Oh, yeah, that's right. It actually paints an interesting picture of Fort Lauderdale back in the day.
What do you mean?
Well, apparently Miami Beach had a curfew during spring break because things were getting a little out of hand.
Wild times.
But in Fort Lauderdale, they only had a couple of arrests during that same time. It makes Fort Lauderdale seem like the more laid-back spring break destination.
Which honestly isn't the first thing that comes to mind when you think of Fort Lauderdale.
Right, exactly. It just goes to show there's always more to discover. And speaking of discoveries, we haven't even touched on the food scene yet.
I was just getting to that. My mouth is watering just looking at all these menus. Fresh seafood, Caribbean-inspired dishes. It's like a culinary adventure waiting to happen.
Well, when you think about all the diverse neighborhoods we've talked about, it makes sense that the food would be just as varied.
You're right. It's like a melting pot of flavors.
You've got classic American stay houses right next to authentic Cuban restaurants and trendy Asian fusion spots. Something for every palate.
And don't forget about those beachfront cafes. I'm picturing myself right now sipping on an iced coffee, listening to the waves crash.
It's all about finding those sensory experiences that make a place come alive. The taste of fresh seafood, the sound of live music on Las Olas, the salty air on your skin.
Okay, you've sold me, flight booked. But seriously, with so much to see and do, how does anyone even begin to plan a trip to Fort Lauderdale?
Well, after today's deep dive, I think the first step is to really hone in on the vibe you're going for. What kind of experience are you craving?
That's a good point. Are we talking luxury yachts and fancy dinners? Or are we thinking more low-key exploring those hidden gem neighborhoods?
Exactly. Once you've nailed down the vibe, then you can start mapping out the must-dos.
And don't forget to leave some room for spontaneity.
Oh, absolutely. Some of the best travel memories come from those unplanned moments.
Exactly. Be open to exploring off the beaten path. Talk to the locals. Try something new. You never know what you might discover.
You might even stumble upon your own little slice of paradise, just like that couple from Minnesota who found their happy place in Lauderdale by the sea.
Now, wouldn't that be something? But even if you don't find paradise, you're guaranteed to create some unforgettable memories. Soaking up the sunshine, exploring the waterways, and uncovering all the hidden gems that Fort Lauderdale has to offer.
Well said. And on that note, I think it's time for us to surface from this deep dive into Fort Lauderdale.
But we want to hear from you. What stood out to you the most? What are you most excited to explore? Hit us up on social media and let's keep the conversation going.
Until next time, happy travels.